They always told me that a girl from the slums should be grateful just to breathe the same air as the wealthy. For 3 agonizing years, I was the silent, obedient wife of Julian Sterling, the heir to a massive real estate empire. His mother, the cold and ruthless matriarch Lady Beatrice, treated me worse than the dirt beneath her designer heels. She called me a parasite. She forced me to eat in the kitchen with the staff. She even made me sign a prenuptial agreement that stated if Julian ever divorced me, I would leave with absolutely nothing but the clothes on my back. I endured it all. Not because I was weak, and not because I loved the sterling money. I endured it because I loved Julian. I thought he was my protector. But yesterday afternoon, my entire world shattered into pieces. I walked into Julian's private office to surprise him with lunch, only to find him wrapped in the arms of his wealthy ex-fiancée, laughing about how they were going to use the prenup to throw me out on the street by the end of the week. They thought they were ruining my life. They thought I would leave crying, broken, and penniless. What they didn't know was that the prenuptial agreement they forced me to sign had a hidden, lethal loophole. And more importantly, they had no idea who my biological father actually was. By tomorrow morning, the Sterling Empire would no longer belong to them. It would belong to me. My name is Vivienne. To understand how I ended up on the floor of a billionaire's mansion begging for respect, you have to know where I came from. I grew up in a small, forgotten town. My mother was a hard-working seamstress who died when I was just 18, leaving me entirely alone in the world. Before she passed, she gave me a small, rusted silver key and told me never to lose it. She told me it belonged to my father, a man she claimed was a brilliant but deeply troubled inventor who had vanished before I was born. I moved to the city, working 2 jobs just to afford a cramped, moldy basement apartment. That was where I met Julian. He was different back then, or, at least, he pretended to be. His car had broken down near the diner where I worked late shifts. I helped him, gave him a warm meal, and we talked for hours. He told me he was tired of the fake people in his high society life. He fell in love with my simplicity, my honesty. When he proposed, I thought I was walking into a fairy tale. But the moment he brought me to the Sterling ancestral estate, the fairy tale turned into a psychological horror movie. Lady Beatrice didn't just dislike me, she despised my very existence. The first day I arrived, she looked at my cheap, worn-out suitcase and ordered the butler to burn it in the garden incinerator. "We do not bring trash into this house, Vivienne," she had said, her voice dripping with venom. Julian stood right next to her, looking at the floor, saying absolutely nothing. That was the first warning sign I chose to ignore. For 3 years, I lived like a ghost in my own marriage. Lady Beatrice implemented strict, humiliating rules. I was not allowed to attend high society galas because my lack of etiquette would embarrass the family. When the Sterlings hosted wealthy investors, I was ordered to stay upstairs in the maids' quarters until the guests left. But the physical isolation was nothing compared to the emotional betrayal. Slowly, Julian began to change. The pressure from his mother and his wealthy friends began to rot his soul. He started looking at me with resentment. He stopped holding my hand. He began coming home late, smelling of expensive perfume that wasn't mine. Whenever I tried to speak to him, To beg him to move out of the mansion into a small apartment with me, he would snap. "Look around you, Vivienne," he would yell, gesturing to the gold-gilded walls. "I gave you a life of luxury. Stop complaining. You're lucky my mother even lets you sleep under this roof." Then came the day of the trap. Lady Beatrice called me into the grand library. Sitting on the desk was a thick legal document, the prenuptial agreement. "Julian is taking over as CEO of the family empire next month," Beatrice said, tapping her diamond-ringed fingers on the paper. "Our board of directors requires financial security. You will sign this. It states that in the event of a divorce, you waive all rights to the sterling fortune, property, and spousal support. If you refuse, the wedding is annulled today." Julian walked into the room, slid a pen toward me, and whispered, "Just sign it, Viv. If you love me, money shouldn't matter to you anyway." With a shaking hand and tears obscuring my vision, I signed my name on the dotted line. I believed that my love would protect me. I was wrong. Yesterday was our third wedding anniversary. Julian had forgotten, of course. He claimed he had an urgent private board meeting at the estate's corporate headquarters downtown. Wanting to surprise him and salvage what was left of our crumbling marriage, I spent all morning cooking his favorite meal. I dressed in the one nice dress I owned and drove to his office. The corporate building was quiet on a Sunday afternoon. The secretary's desk was empty. I walked down the long, carpeted hallway toward the CEO's office. The door was slightly ajar. I was about to push it open when I heard a familiar, high-pitched laugh. It was Victoria, the daughter of a wealthy oil tycoon, the woman Lady Beatrice had always wanted Julian to marry. I froze, my heart pounding against my ribs. I peeked through the gap. Julian was sitting at his massive desk, and Victoria was sitting on his lap, her arms wrapped around his neck. "When are you finally going to get rid of that boring peasant, Julian?" Victoria purred, playing with his tie. "I'm tired of hiding in the shadows." Julian laughed, a cold, mocking sound that I had never heard from him before. "Don't worry, darling. The trap is already set. My mother and the lawyers finalized everything. Tomorrow, I'm filing the divorce papers. Because of the prenup she signed, she won't get a single penny. She'll walk out of here just as poor and pathetic as the day I found her. By next month, you and I will be married, and our families' empires will merge." My hands began to violently tremble. The lunch container slipped from my fingers, hitting the floor with a loud crash. The door flew open. Julian stood there, his face turning pale when he saw me. But within seconds, his shock turned into cold arrogance. He didn't apologize. He didn't even look guilty. "Well, I guess the secret is out," Julian said, crossing his arms. "It's over, Vivienne. Pack your things and get out of my house. You never belonged in our world anyway." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. A strange, icy calm washed over my entire body. I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "You're right, Julian. I don't belong in your world. Because my world is much, much bigger than yours." I left the corporate building and drove straight back to the mansion, but I didn't pack my clothes. Instead, I went to the loose floorboard in the closet where I kept my mother's old belongings. I pulled out the rusted silver key. For 3 years, I had ignored it. But now, with nothing left to lose, I looked closely at the engraving on the back. It read, "Property of VA Industries, Vault 01, VA Industries, the largest, most powerful private defense and technology conglomerate in the country. A company so wealthy they practically owned the city's banking system. I took a taxi to the main branch of the private bank. I showed the head clerk the key. Within 2 minutes, the manager rushed out, dripping with sweat, and escorted me into a private underground vault room. Waiting for me was Mr. Arthur Pendleton, the most feared corporate attorney in the state. "Miss Vivienne," the old man said, tears in his eyes as he bowed deeply to me. "We have been searching for you for 10 years. Your father was Victor Vance, the founder of VA Industries. Before his passing, he hid you and your mother to protect you from his corporate enemies. He left his entire empire, his patents, and his liquid wealth of $5.8 billion to you, but there is something more urgent you need to see." Mr. Pendleton opened a massive leather ledger. 2 years ago, Sterling Holdings was facing bankruptcy. They took out a massive confidential loan to save their real estate empire. Miss Vivienne, VA Industries bought that debt. You don't just own your father's company, you own the Sterlings. Every mansion they sleep in, every office they work in, and every dollar they spend belongs to you. But then, Mr. Pendleton looked at the prenuptial agreement I had brought with me. He began to laugh. They thought they were being clever. The lawyer smiled wickedly. "This contract states that you waive all rights to the Sterling fortune. But it also contains a standard reciprocal clause. Any debt, liability, or corporate entity owned by the spouse prior to the divorce remains theirs. Vivienne, because they are divorcing you, they cannot claim a single dime of your inheritance. But because you own their debt, you have the legal right to call in their loan immediately. They didn't just lock you out of their family. They legally handed you the keys to destroy them." The next morning, Lady Beatrice, Julian, and Victoria sat in the grand boardroom of the Sterling headquarters. They had a smug, celebratory smile on their faces. Julian slid the divorce papers across the table toward me. "Sign it, Vivienne. Let's make this quick. The security guards are already waiting at the mansion to throw your trash bags into the street." Lady Beatrice sneered. "Be grateful we are letting you keep the wedding ring, you pathetic little mouse." I didn't sign the papers. Instead, I sat down at the head of the table. Mr. Pendleton walked in right behind me, slamming a massive stack of red foreclosure documents onto the mahogany wood. "What is the meaning of this?" Lady Beatrice barked, standing up. "Who authorized this man to enter my boardroom?" Mr. Pendleton looked at her coldly. "You are mistaken, madam. This is no longer your boardroom. Allow me to introduce the sole heir to VA Industries and the primary creditor of Sterling Holdings, Miss Vivienne Vance." The room went completely, terrifyingly silent. Julian's mouth fell open. "Vivienne? What? What is he talking about? This is a joke, right?" I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table, looking directly at the husband who had betrayed me. "It's no joke, Julian," I said, my voice echoing with absolute authority. "Your family owes my company $450 million. The deadline for payment was 10 minutes ago. Since you cannot pay, as of right now, VA Industries is seizing all assets of Sterling Holdings. The cars you drive, the corporate offices you stand in, and the grand mansion you love so much are now my property." Lady Beatrice clutched her chest, turning as white as a sheet. "No, this is impossible. You're a nobody, A charity case. Security, I said calmly without raising my voice. 4 heavy-set security guards stepped into the room. Please escort these trespassers out of my building, I ordered, and tell the staff at the Sterling Mansion to change the locks. If Lady Beatrice wants her clothes, tell her she can find them in the trash incinerator outside. Julian fell to his knees, grabbing the edge of my dress. Vivienne, please. I was pressured by my mother. I love you. I've always loved you. We can start over. I pulled my dress away from his trembling hands, looking down at him with nothing but pity. You told me yesterday that I didn't belong in your world, Julian, I whispered. And you were right. Because today, your world belongs to me. They were dragged out of the building, screaming and crying, disgraced in front of the entire city's media. Victoria immediately left Julian the moment she realized he was broke. Lady Beatrice was forced to move into a tiny, cramped apartment in the exact same poor neighborhood where I grew up. They tried to bury me, thinking I was just a seed in the dirt. They didn't realize that some seeds grow into trees that will eventually block out their sun. Justice is a quiet whisper, until it becomes a storm that destroys everything in its path.